Welcome to this episode of
My Wife is a Therapist.
Let's Get Into It.
The following may or may not have happened.
If you were to die now, do you think you've maximized your potential?
Yeah, man. I feel so. That's quite a deep question. Is what happened to you?
No, I was just thinking, with this pandemic and all that going on, you never know what could happen.
Yeah, it's true. You ever thought about what kind of funeral you would like to have?
No, that doesn't matter. It's not like I'll be there for it.
Really? So there ain't nothing you ever went to a funeral and see them doing or not doing and you say, I either don't want them to do that or I want them to do this for me when I dead?
No, they could throw me overboard if they want.
Oh,
It's not like I can be there for it.
You just extra. You know, something like for me, when I go to funerals, in Guyana, there's people's won't clap and there's like, be afraid to clap. I want people clap.
Clap for what though? It's like they don't want to clap us at funerals. You want people clapping when the 6 people pick up and put on your casket?
Why? I mean, like if somebody sing or something. Plus, I want good music, not when you go. Sometimes you can't even find a keyboardist. I want proper music.
It's like good music, like at your wedding.
Yes, like that.
Okay, well, I'll have to write that down. But if you die, I'm not sure that I'd go to your wedding. No wedding, I'd not go to your funeral.
Why does happen? Like, people say, wait, what? What do you mean you wouldn't go to my funeral, Carlyle?
It's like, what's the point? Alright, listen to this.
What story is this?
You already know I love you, right?
Yes, I know.
Good. So I am sure you know this while you're alive. So what's the point of flying till there for you and you wouldn't know? It's not like I'm doing it for you, I'm doing it for people.
Jesus, Lord have mercy. But something seriously wrong with your head,
Why you say that?
From this week, we're going to start each podcast.
Hopefully every week, Hopefully we get enough feedback from people so we can continue doing this.
Yeah, but we're going to start each podcast by bigging up persons who've been tuning in and reaching out and giving feedback.
Both good and bad.
So to unveil this first version of this segment, I'll be shouting out the first person who gave us a public review. Tamika Henry Fraser. And here's what she said. From just one episode, I'm hooked. This podcast is relatable, funny, and sincere. But even more noteworthy is the candid look at everyday relationship issues, not only to examine them systematically, but also to gain valuable researched tools to work through them. The Collins don't paint a picture of having the perfect relationship, but they do illustrate the work that needs to be done to ensure that your relationship is sustained in its best possible state. I highly encourage all young couples, whether married already or thinking about getting married, to subscribe and participate in the conversations on My Wife is a Therapist. Tamika?
You've stumped us.
Yup, that's out.
Gone with
So you think people think we just be making up these things or they think I'm ridiculous?
I think people, for your sake, just be hoping that we're making it up. Well, I said it's trippiness you are talking about it.
So this podcast is probably, it named that what qualities you shouldn't have in a husband or something like that. Any good thing about me is coming out in this podcast?
Yes, baby. Yes, of course.
All right.
Yeah, man. No, I think it's just real. It's it brings to the fore some of those conversations that people usually have, but they're
You
too
think
ashamed.
someone else would? You think there's some other person on this earth that tell the wife though?
I don't know. You're just weird, Carlyle. We've established that you're very strange.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure somewhere else people would. I don't know. Maybe we should do a poll. Has anyone ever told their wife that they ain't going to a funeral?
Or heard of someone? Probably people probably don't talk about funerals. We probably have some morbid conversations.
Yes, we do. Yeah, since we're dating, remember when you were going to South Sudan? And it was like this war zone kind of thing going on and you were going on this mission trip. And I actually told myself, I don't know if I told you this, but I told myself that there is the possibility that Carlyle ain't coming back.
Oh my god.
And I made sure that you knew how much I loved you before you left. And just started to prepare myself for the worst. That's me. Yeah.
Oh my god. Me and Mario is preparing for death.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the start of the pandemic. Oh my god. It was the start of the pandemic and we had no idea what was happening. You know, people dying.
Yeah, I think it was
rumors
after
everywhere.
Daddy died too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rumors. Yeah, it was just after your father. Your father missed the pandemic.
Yes, he
Your father started
escaped
meeting
it.
with this. I going home.
Daddy, it was so funny because Daddy died the 26th of February, and then we had our first case confirmed again, I think the 5th of March or something.
Okay,
Or
okay.
something like that. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, well, it started other parts of the world before it reached Guyana.
Yeah.
Yeah, so over here, things were kind of sticky. People's classes were cancelled and things like that. So you start thinking about your life. You're wondering what's going to happen to you. You're hearing rumors, you're seeing news. Nobody knew what was happening. So everyone's a bit nervous. But I was a bit nervous at certain points before you knew that young people weren't dying.
Oh, gosh.
But anyway, yeah, so I was wondering, started thinking about life and death and wondering if I live my life to my fullest potential, what would happen and all. Then we had this conversation.
Yeah. I was completely appalled. I could not believe. I've heard you say some very interesting things. But telling your wife that you ain't coming to your funeral was just like, what madness is this? How this boy could possibly justify this?
I gave you my justification.
What were your justifications?
So it was generally, so my thoughts about this and like funerals and people dying, most of the things that are done for the people who are still alive, right? Which I guess, I don't know, is fair enough. But to say I'm doing this for the person who died, I'm doing this for my wife would have liked this. So my wife isn't there anymore. So what's the point of saying or doing it for their sake?
And I guess I think of it as, and I suppose these sorts of things only like came to the fore for me when I was preparing for Daddy's funeral. I was very much aware that Daddy ain't gonna know. Daddy's request was to be cremated. He ain't gonna know the difference. Daddy's request was to be buried quickly. He ain't gonna know the difference, right? But I think it was about honoring his memory and what he meant to me. That sort of really put things in perspective. So this is what he wanted and this is what I'm going to do. It's my last opportunity to do something.
Not for him though.
It wasn't in my head it was for the memory and to honor the relationship that we had.
You do not for you.
No.
Who are you doing it for?
I'm doing it for our relationship. His relationship is still very much, the concept of it is still very much alive in my mind. I've lost him in the living sense, but
He watching over you?
No, he's not. He's not watching over me. But it's just that sense of honoring what this person meant to me. Whether they will know it or not is beside the point. For me, it is about, this is the relationship. The relationship was special, and so I am going to honor it regardless of who sees or who doesn't see.
But
You still think it's for other people?
it is, isn't it? Because I
Me
think,
and we didn't spend all that money to cremate you for other people.
and I guess other people didn't know also that he wanted to be cremated, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're doing it for yourself.
I suppose there is that, yes. You do it for yourself so you could get some closure as well. And satisfying in your mind and heart that I did my part to honor my father. To honor my father. Yeah. So it was very much about that for me. The process of preparing to say goodbye to his body was very much about honoring my father. This is my last opportunity to do it, and so I'm going to do it. So it was like I was just aware of the, I don't know like how else to explain it, but yeah, it was just about honoring him in the last way that I possibly could. And then the other thing was that I do believe that the body is precious, and so how we treat with the body is very important. I mean, yeah, it is just a shell and stuff, and what is most important, for us as Christians is the spirit and the soul, and I suppose more so the spirit. But I believe that the body is a gift from God, and so how we treat with the body is important, and I'm going to honor his body.
Okay.
You, on the other hand, told me and care what to do with your body.
I said that?
Not in other words. That's what I get from it.
No, that's disrespectful to say that. No, my logic was, you're alive now. You can see everything that I can do for you, right?
Yeah.
Let me just ensure I make sure this woman knows that I love her.
Yeah, and I
Right?
do know. Yeah.
Because say if I turn up at your funeral or not, I can just look bad with the family and the whole world. But
Yeah.
you know I love you. You
Mhm.
knew that, right? And you went away knowing that,
Mhm.
even if we were apart.
Yeah.
Well, this will happen because I was in the UK and she was back home. So
Mhm.
we're talking about this overseas long
Yeah.
distance thing.
So yeah, and I thought of that, and I think that that's a valid point. I think it's valid to say that it's not about the person who's dead anymore.
It's not. I don't
because
think it is.
yeah, so I'm like the people would say, "Give me my flowers when I'm alive, not
Mm.
don't wait till I'm dead," kind of thing, and that's valid. But I also think that there's something about, and I suppose there are different ways to honor our relationship.
Exactly. I could do something else.
You could do something
I could
by
take care of your
yourself.
dogs. I could become a dog person.
Wait till
You
I'm
remember-
dead
you remember
to
Toy-
become a dog person.
Exactly.
Yes.
To honor your memory. To honor your memory.
Honor my this is a good this is a good opportunity to invite you to honor me while I am alive by becoming a dog person.
You have dogs. I don't have to become a dog person.
You see, you want me till I'm dead for my death to push you into becoming a dog person.
John Wick.
Oh jeez, Lord have mercy. Yeah, but I think I do want to acknowledge that I do think that the funeral is for the living and not for the dead. Because the funeral, like you said, and like we're saying that Daddy didn't know left from right what was done. Because the dead know nothing. But I knew, and there were things that I and my siblings and my mom needed, I think, in order to have that sense of closure, which I do believe as a therapist is very important in the process. I mean, I was there when he died. I was there when we were like walking through. I could remember having to go to the funeral parlor and talking with the people and just being dazed over this, going back to his room, watching it, things were put away as if,
Never existed.
as if he never existed.
You remember? I realized what it was like to be dead.
What?
Wrong words. But remember, like when I was leaving to come here, and it's like so some of my work colleagues sent me a
Oh.
picture of my desk, and it's like, what is like it's like a dead, like a disappear.
Yes.
So it's like I can understand what you're saying in terms of like
Yeah.
things were packed away, like if he was never there.
Yeah.
It wasn't like really soon after he died as well.
Yeah, it was. It was the next day.
Mm.
And I think that was my brother and his wife's way of also coping with it. Because, I mean, they did take care of him down to the end. So putting away his things, I suppose, was their way of dealing with it. But I would have liked for it to stay the way it was for a little while longer. So I think that for me, it is that we carry the relationship in us, sort of. Like the memory of it, the memories of things that were done, things that we shared together and all that. And that is what I want to honor. Like I want to ensure that even in my living days that I still have a sense of that I cherish that. And one of the ways that I believe that you can cherish it is to turn up to your wife's funeral.
Why are we talking as if you're going to die first?
Exactly.
But it was
do not assume.
It was just a scenario anyway.
Yeah, it
so
was,
you weren't the one that said you wouldn't turn up to my funeral.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess another problem I was having is like my wedding day,
Mm.
right? We were the center of attention, right?
Yeah.
And that's the last time I want that happened in my life. So now
Mm.
I have a young wife, and she's died. And let's see who the husband and say, oh my God, look at the wife gone, and that's that.
And that is very much what happens, right? I think
Yeah.
lots of people came to Daddy's funeral to hear what the children going to say.
Yeah.
And yeah, there is that measure of performance that's
yeah.
part of it. And I think I understand why you said what you said. You're a very private person, so you would want to grieve.
You want nobody comfort me.
Mhm.
I good. I want keep me grief to myself, and I can deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can probably connect with your family to sort of lean on them if you need to, but you don't want people to. You're not a monkey on performance.
Especially you. A lot of people know you, so I'm sure
Yeah.
a lot of people know you, and a lot of people love you and stuff like that. So it'll be like a massive affair.
Yeah.
Why are we having this? This is so this is so morbid. Oh my goodness.
This is the reality, and I think, and I don't remember when it happened, but there was a point where I realized that I was not afraid of death anymore. And as a child, sometimes your parents don't want you. I even wrote my eulogy. I told you about that.
Yeah.
When I was small, I was like in primary school or something, and I just sat down and I thought, you know what would I want people to say about me at my funeral? And I wrote it out and I read it for my family, and they were so confused, like, Chris, what is going on?
A deliverance service.
But yeah, I think that there is something that's important in the honor that we do give to the relationship, and I think that's what I think of when I am trying to sort of figure out how I'm going to mourn this person and how I'm going to do the final honoring in that funeral service. But I think also what was confusing for me is, and I asked you this, who you think is responsible for burying me? My mother?
No, and then when it all made sense again. I was like, okay, I would have to man up and take care of my responsibilities because you belong to
It's
me.
your final act.
No, and I was saying this to you as well, that obviously I wouldn't neglect my responsibilities of, I guess, the financial obligations of a funeral and stuff like that. You know, my wife would have to sort it out. But then also, I have to bury my wife because we're a union. I took her from her father's roof, and now she's mine, so I'd have to look after that.
Yeah. And I do think also that it was confusing for me, and it was bordering on hurtful because
it didn't reach her this time.
I don't think it reached her.
It didn't hurt like when I say he's not
Actually,
family.
I think I did.
Oh
I
my
spoke
God.
to Avian about this.
Oh my gosh, you have to go to the counselor?
I had to go to Avian. Avian is my friend therapist.
Yeah.
And I said, you could believe this man? She said, Carese, what stupidness you telling me? But where was I going with that?
Avian has judged me so. Avian must his judged me. Oh my
Avian loves you. She said you're her best friend. Anyway, I am thinking of the fact that so my thing was also, my family would be really heartbroken over this as well, and I know that you would have your own heartbreak to deal with. But I think that in funerals and in the arrangements, the days leading up to it, from my experience, it was about us bonding with each other. And I know you don't like that word, bonding, but it was about connecting with each other so that we could share in the grief. Now, as you know, when Daddy died, I was in the house by myself, and people were like, why you don't go by your mother? And why? No, I wanted to be alone. I wanted to be alone to process my grief, to talk about it, to cry about it if I needed to be angry, to go through those stages and whatnot. And I think it was the best thing I did for myself, to retreat from the places where I was going to be asked lots of questions and all that. Because I found that when I was with my family, I would go immediately into caretaker mode. So let's get it done. Let's do this. Let's do that. Are you okay? Have you eaten? Have you? So I needed to be by myself so I could have had that space. And I think that you would certainly need that kind of space. God forbid if if I did pass on before you. But my point is just that I think there needs to be. It doesn't need to be. But I would like to acknowledge that people grieve and mourn in different ways. Some people throw themselves into work. Some people slow down and become immersed in the grief and allow it to overtake them so that they could pass through it. Some people ignore it, and then it creeps up on them one day and they suddenly break down and all that. But I think that's okay. But I think you need to come to my funeral if I die before you.
Yeah. You've already established that. So I've repented. I've done a U-turn. So that's dealt with. I was wondering though also. So as you were speaking earlier about the performance aspect of it, especially people coming to spectate, not necessarily performance aspect of it, a spectatorship aspect. So people will come, a lot of people just come to see, let me see the body, let me see what she looks and stuff like that. So maybe because of our culture, in terms of our funeral culture, a funeral is basically an open affair. Yeah. Right? So people, it's not private at all. So maybe things like that maybe need to change, or at least we need to be able to deal with things like that. I think for me at least, I would prefer a private affair. Yeah, who can come, but that's probably wouldn't be accepted or acceptable in a culture like Guyana.
Yeah, and I do think that more thought needs to be given to this, because people would, Daddy was, before he died, Daddy saying he want a wake. And some of his friends said, well, yeah, we can do a wake for him and stuff. And I just kept thinking, but the man don't want a wake anyway.
The man ain't about no more.
The man ain't about no more,
yeah,
right?
It's for the people.
But thankfully, the thing was a bust.
Oh my
they
gosh.
had no food. There's another story for another day. But But it was very much about, I suppose, people being able to come together and to come alongside. But I really didn't want all those people around, to be honest. I was very happy. People were upset with our family for not, for example, not doing a death announcement. And I was like,
I remember when our friends from the UK came to Guyana and they were just like flicking through the TV and they were very confused when they saw the death announcement.
like, what is this? And so yeah, people were upset with us because we didn't do a death announcement and whatnot. And in my head, I just thought, you know what? Anyone who needed to know about when the funeral was going to happen, they knew. And his friends knew. And our family knew. And that was good enough for me. And news travels. So it would have had to be word of mouth. We made that decision for, various reasons and whatnot. But I think people tend to make other people's grief about them. So lots of people were asking us, oh, can you put the funeral at this time? Or can you, why y'all don't do this? Or why y'all don't bury him instead of cremating him? I was like, okay, the funeral is this date. My brother and I and stuff. And it was just, I think that we can be very insensitive to the grieving, and we certainly need to revisit those practices that we have in our culture. That I remember when we went to the crematorium to talk to the man, and he was saying, from his experience when his wife died, he didn't want to have no wake-art, and he said people kept bothering him. So every night, every afternoon at around 6 o'clock, he just used to go away. And people used to turn up at the house and he in there. He said, y'all want to wake yourself. So he was just encouraging me, to not allow people to stress us out and stuff. And I think that was really helpful. I think some people do like the wake type thing,
It's a bit more informal and relaxed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And actually talk about the person.
Exactly. But I think that the family should have the right to decide how they would like to mourn, and people need to learn to honor that. And now for therapy apps.
If you didn't know, my wife is a therapist. I'll ask her to put on her therapist hat and share some pointers with you for how to navigate situations like this that might arise in your relationships.
This year has been a year of incredible loss for lots of people. So I think it's important to have an understanding of what might be helpful or unhelpful when supporting others who are grieving. I'm going to share with you a few things I learned from my conversation with my husband, as well as from my own experience of losing my father. The first thing is, death is inconvenient. Asking the loved ones to make provisions for you in their time of grief is insensitive. If the family decides on a date or time for the funeral and you realize it's going to be difficult for you to be there, please do not ask the family to change the time of the service for your sake. If you really want to be there to offer moral support, find a way. If the person who's passed on was near and dear to you, it's okay to feel devastated about not being able to attend their funeral. But before you ask the family to change the date, venue, or time, take a deep breath and remind yourself, it's not about me. It's not about me. It is not about me. If there's no way you could attend, find a way to make it up to the family. Secondly, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to supporting people in grief. When my father died, I had lots of people say to me,
I don't really know how to support people in their grief.
I was surprised by the fact that it wasn't obvious that we could just ask them. I think a lot of the ignorance around how to support others stems from a great discomfort with talking about death. We seem to think that if we talk about it, it's going to happen sooner. But the only sure thing in life is that humans die. No two deaths are experienced in the same way, and no two people mourn in exactly the same way. It was really hard to hear my husband talk about the fact that he didn't think he would want to attend my funeral if I died. But I had to accept that he is a different person and that he processes difficult emotions differently. And people mourn differently. Respect that and be open to supporting people in the ways they ask to be supported. Which brings me to my final point. Respect people's privacy. This may come as a shock to some of my Guyanese brethren, but not every bereaved family will actually want to have a wake or to be surrounded by lots of humans when they're grieving. Planning and executing a wake is also just one more thing for the family to think about, not to mention spend a lot of money on. I've been in several situations where people were grieving, but they couldn't have the peace to process their grief because their homes were crowded day after day with well-meaning people, some of whom they didn't even know. Respect the family's right to decide against a wake or any other activity so that they could mourn in private. There are many other ways to show support. Refer to my earlier point for guidance. And please, do not badger the bereaved with questions. If you want information, check your motives. Are you just being inquisitive? What is the value of this information? What am I going to do with it? Asking questions like,
So when last year I carried you to the hospital?
Can go absolutely nowhere. It doesn't change the outcome of the situation, and the grieving person can often end up feeling worse. And if you realize that you'd just rather be alone in your grief, don't feel guilty. You have a right to seek out quiet spaces to take care of your broken heart. And you have a right to decide on who you invite into those spaces with you. So the next time you're about to reach out to someone who's lost a loved one, check your culture, check your motives, check yourself.
Thank you for those wise words, babe.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed it.
If you found this enjoyable, please recommend this podcast to one friend who you know will find it useful. We'd appreciate it. And we'd love to hear from you. So send us an email at mywifeisatherapist@gmail.com.
And remember, my wife is not just a therapist. She is an excellent therapist.